Περιμένετε δευτερόλεπτα γιατί πρέπει να πάρουμε το OK από την Αθήνα για να ξεκινήσουμε, για να παίζει και διαδικτυακά. Καλημέρα σας και πολύ καλή.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hybrid event, so we have very few people in our physical premises and all the other ones attend this event online. This is a European People's Party event focusing on the environment, on climate change and the climate crisis. This is something that we have been experiencing for quite a few years, and we will talk about the future. Very quickly, let me introduce our physical attendants and those that will soon connect online. Our host, the head of the region of Thessaly, Mr. Κώστας Αγοραστός, Professor Ευθύμης Λέκας, the head of research for the Ανέωσης, Ms. Faye Makadasi, she did talk about the climate during the Delphi Economic Forum, and we will also hear from Margaritis Skinas, the Vice President of the European Commission, who is on Mount Athos, accompanied by Mr. Skalkos, the Secretary General of Public Works, so they have sent recorded messages for this event. Quite soon, Mr. Christos Tiratopoulos will join us, the Minister assisting the Prime Minister, who is responsible for addressing the damages after a natural disaster. And we will also connect with the Secretary General of the Academy of Athens and National Representative for Climate Change, Christos Zerefos, and the EMP, Maria Spiraki. Before that, let us all watch a 4-minute video that talks about climate crisis in Greece, but with special references to the region of Thessaly. Disasters. These are images from the Anos flood in September 2020. At Pharsala and other areas in Thessaly. This is the city of Karditsa after the Anos flood. This is the island of Kefalonia after the Anos flood in September 2020.
Blizzard.
These are images from the media.
Those are images from the media blizzard in February 2021 in Thessaly.
These are images from the Elpida blizzard in January 2022. In Attica, the images are from Attica. These are images from the wildfires at Mati in July 2018. Videos from the flood in Mandra area near Elefsina in November 2017. Images from the tornado in Chalkidiki in July 2019. Wildfires in Attica, Evia and the Peloponnese in August 2021.
Αυτή είναι μια εικόνα που
These images are astounding and they don't belong to the past because the estimates, according to the estimates, the images in the future may be even more dramatic. Let's now connect to the Secretary General of the Academy of Athens, the renowned Professor Christos Zarefos, the National Representative for Climate Change. Good morning. Have a nice week. Hello to the head of region and my dear colleagues attending this conference. And there will be more people joining us later. Mr. Zerefos, how do we define climate change? Well, climate change is what we're actually experiencing. We are experiencing through the form of crisis, but to my mind, climate change and climate crisis are the same thing. And if we don't do anything, the crisis will completely substitute the word change, and we will continue with this global warming of the planet. Professor, you are saying that we will no longer be talking about climate change. So is this debate, this international debate about mitigating this global warming, is this debate in vain? Or there is room for something to be done? Well, it took me 40 years to persuade, along with many colleagues, because we started talking about global changes many years ago. Back then, nobody was talking about the climate. We were talking about global change. We had the ozone layer thinning, followed by climate change. I will show you a few charts that are very interesting. In 1900, nobody was talking about climate change, man-made climate change. People were not able to influence the climate back then, but the Mediterranean mean annual air temperature was around 15 degrees, but now the mean annual air temperature is around 17 degrees Celsius, so 2 degrees within a century. Rainy season precipitation from October to March in the Mediterranean decreased. This decrease is significant. After the 1980s, you might remember that there was shortage of water during the 80s. We used to save water even when using the bathroom. Of course, let me be more specific about the Thessaly region, the Larissa city. Even during the 80s, after 1986, 1987, they were using water cannons for the irrigation of the fields, but this water evaporated before reaching the ground. This is the updated report of the Bank of Greece, and these are the estimates according to two different scenarios. These scenarios demonstrate, on the left we have the more optimistic scenario, and on the right a less optimistic one. RCP45 and RCP85 accounts for doing something in the case of the RCP45 and doing absolutely anything in the case of RCP85. I do hope, however, that we will go towards the more optimistic scenario and we will correct the mistakes of the past. You can see that this is color-coded. Temperature definitely will rise more than 3 degrees Celsius even in the more optimistic scenarios. The less optimistic one involves a 5 degrees Celsius increase. It is almost impossible to manage to stop the increase of temperature at 1.5 degrees. What's important for our country, because we have been experiencing warm summers, that summers will be even worse. In the Mediterranean, as you can see, the temperature increase will be more than 5 degrees Celsius according to the more pessimistic scenario. When it comes to the rainy season precipitation change, there will be changes as well. Decrease by 10% by the end of the century. And here are the changes within a period of 100 years. And you can see the winter minimum temperature on the upper left side of the chart, and on the lower left side of the map, the chart, you can see the summer maximum temperature. The increase will be more than 4 degrees Celsius. On the right part of the screen, you can see the number of days with winter minimum temperature below 0 degrees Celsius and the number of days with summer maximum temperature over 41 degrees Celsius. Until 1940, there were about 100 such days in the winter. Now they are about 30. On the contrary, the number of days with extreme temperatures have increased. They were 2 to 3 around 1930, and now they are 14. The first serious heat waves that we experienced in our country started after 1986, 1987. This is very important because it demonstrates this destabilization of the climate. Now, the changes in the winter temperature according to our 21 models. All 21 models reach the same results, they reach the same estimates about the change of temperature and the change of precipitation during the rainy season. Unfortunately, in West Greece, there will be major changes, and let's not forget that the eastern part of Greece receives water supply from its west part. If we take a look at the temperature at a global level, here is a simulation from the Max Planck Institute in Hamburg. You can see the color code scale. On the left, we have the more optimistic scenario, RCP 2.6, and on the right side, we have the most pessimistic scenario, which accounts for RCP 8.5. We have reached now the end of the century, 2019, and take a look at the picture. There is full destabilization on the poles. An increasing temperature of more than 6 to 7 degrees. And even in the mild scenario, poles, both the north one and the south one, will experience a radical change. The heat from the hot areas reach the poles, which then stabilizes the temperature, but this stabilization will no longer exist in the future. This is a model from Anchor. It's about the climate migrants from the Sahel area in Africa. On the right side of the chart, you can see the annual precipitation rates at Sahel and how much they have decreased. So let's start from the previous century. You can see how the precipitation model changes as the years go by. Rainfall all over Africa and the Mediterranean start decreasing. There is destabilization first in the Sahel period and then throughout Africa and the Mediterranean. The rainfall rate keeps decreasing in Sahel, and there will be very low rainfall throughout Africa and the Mediterranean, including the final image that you will see now at the end of our century, where rainfall will have decreased by around 40 to 60%. These are major changes. If there were ecologic migrants in the beginning of 70s, you can imagine what will happen at the end of our century. Back then, at the beginning of the 1970s, the decrease was only 10%. What are the conclusions that can be reached? The mean annual Mediterranean temperature in the Mediterranean increased around 1.5 degrees Celsius. The cold days, the number of cold days or frost days have decreased. Precipitation has decreased. Let me just say a few words, and I will then conclude my speech. It's very difficult, in my humble opinion, to reverse this image. It is very difficult to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, to stop the increase of temperature at 2 degrees Celsius only. Our only hope is to adjust, to learn how to live with this new climate phenomena, these new climate conditions. But it would be, of course, better to store water in areas such and save water in areas such as the Thessaly region. Thank you.
Professor, you will stay with us anyway, because we will also have a Q&A session. But from what I heard, I understand that the head of region is on the edge of his seat, literally, because he wants to see what's going to happen with the aquifers and the water reservoirs. So we need to move forward with big projects and works. Well, yes, it's true, the land improvement works will be performed, and today we also have big projects in order for us to adapt to the climate change. You know that we have, let's say, a havoc here in the academy, and I will do my best to stay with you, but if there are any questions, I would rather prefer taking them now. Well, actually, we cannot do that because Ms. Spyraki has a plane to catch and we need to move forward with her presentation, so we can get back to you in 10 minutes, if you could spare us 10 minutes. Okay, yes, I will try to be available for the next 15 minutes. Okay, thank you. Now, like you heard, the EMP of the New Democracy Party, Ms. Maria Spyraki, has a plane to catch. She is a member of committees that meet in order to discuss the topic of today's event. She is a member of the Committee for the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, and Industry Research and Energy. Ms. Spyraki, hello. Hello everyone from Thessaloniki. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I must say that I'm very sorry that I couldn't be there physically. I would also like to thank the head of the region, Mr. Agorastos. And this is not just a compliment. I want to actually thank him for the substantial work he's undertaking in order to tackle climate change. I must say that Thessaly is a pioneer in Europe and at all aspects. And of course, I cannot refrain from talking again and again about the wonderful job done in Thessaly. And we know that we have a long-standing experience in that. Now, let me start from the difficult and the unpleasant things, because we need to be very concrete when we try to describe things. According to the European database for emergencies, 730,000 people have lost their lives to climate change, extreme weather conditions. Millions of people have been injured. Millions of people have stayed homeless due to the natural disasters. We're here in Greece, so let me share a few numbers for Greece. Since November 2021, Greece has been a part of the greenhouse gas pollutants that accounts to 0.18%. One might say this is minimal, but we still emit more than we should emit. In 2019, hopefully, Greece emitted 20% less greenhouse gases compared to what was happening back in 1970. Of course, this is due to the recession that we saw due to the financial crisis and the increase in the use of RESs. However, in order to call a spade, every one of us emits certain amounts of carbon dioxide per year, and we also have the emissions due to transportation, a plane or car or anything else. And considering our goal to reduce by 55% the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, we need to remember that the carbon dioxide we emit as persons should drop to 3 tons per year. And on the basis of the same data, in order now to move to our personal things regarding the Thessaly region by 2050, we will experience 20 or 30 more hot days per year. We will have a 10 to 30% increase in precipitation. The days where we will run high risk of fire will increase by 30%, and extreme weather conditions will become the new normal. Now, when it comes to the region of Thessaly, just like scientific reviews indicate, Larissa and Volos are among the Greek cities that will be more affected by the climate crisis. Tropical nights, increase of thermal incidents, increase of the average temperature, increase in floods, and those are but a few of the phenomena that the climate crisis holds for us. And of course, this is not a very distant future. So, given that the scientific approach has offered us all the data we need to warn us, we as politicians should try and act promptly, now, right here, right now. And we need to learn from the mistakes of the past. In the not so past, we didn't work very well in terms of prevention works. On the contrary, I must say that we did perform extremely poorly, and our performance is such that should not be replicated in the next programming period. The regions, led by the region of Thessaly, can play a key role. So let me talk about the budget, the spending revenues analysis for the period 2014-2020. In this period, 14.8 million were given to Greece in the category of sustainable development and natural resources. And out of this 41 million, 19 million were allocated in this region. 2019, we start with 8.2 billion. This had to do with the sustainable development and natural resource for the next 2 years. This brought us to 2020. The difficult part of this allocation is that it dropped from the year 2016 to the year 2020, it reached 1.5% of the GDP. Out of this 19 billion, only 64 million were given to the LIFE program, which is the top program focusing on the environment. And this brings us to the investment and structural funds of the European Union for this period 2014-2020. Well, there, when it comes to the climate change adaptation and risk prevention, we saw only 2 billion euro given. Only 2 billion euro were given. And the most important part is that in 2017, our country had to absorb to this direction. I'm talking about the climate change adaptation and risk in avert. Only 3% of those resources. Now we perform better. In 2020, we had 73% absorption of these funds, something that makes us rather optimistic, but this does not mean that we perform excellently. Now, let's see what we can do in terms of our daily life. Let's start with numbers. Well, we need to transfer funds and resources in order to finance prevention. This should exceed 70%, and 30% of this budget should be used occasionally by the community budget in order to tackle and manage natural disasters. And this is the key. We need to transfer those things in works in order to better understand the impact of climate crisis, and those works need to operate in complementing and supplementing the natural environment. We need to have large-scale works, something that would translate in higher footprint and impact on those regions. It is on this basis that we should focus on prevention in order to better manage water so that we can prevent floods, and at the same time we want to use this water for farming. And we also need to address all the other aspects of the European Commission, because the European Commission focuses on two sectors that are very valuable for Thessaly. I'm talking about animal breeding and agritourism. Now, when it comes to animal breeding, well, the common practice, as you know, is the well-known use of cutting-edge techniques and technological tools such as GPS, soil improvement, aiming at improving production, increasing production through precision medicine. And of course, the dietary changes of animals should change. And we also have to use manure in another way in order to have other units for the production of biogas, which is a valuable strategy in the European Union and is also officially financed. And this is also another strategy that I have been involved in. Now, when it comes now to the agriculture sector, things can be done to the direction of tourism. I'm sure that you have included that in your planning. We want to upgrade through a dedicated program the energy status of all accommodation premises in order to upgrade the quality of air, etc. Now, when it comes to sustainable tourism aspect, we want to do that through the valuable and sustainable use of resources. And this is, those are only a few of the strategies that we can implement. We know that Thessaly does not only have fields, it also has seas. And we need to see what's happening in the sea in order to preserve and maintain a good level. This also includes incentives in order to improve the fishing activity. It also includes the tackling of the sea pollution, as well as other aspects that will make the Thessaly region, the maritime Thessaly region, better than or equal to the farmers. Now, prevention is key, and we need to change the way in which we see and consider mid- and long-term investments in our works. And we know that works should be our first priority. These are not luxury programs or works that should be carried out only if we have the resources, etc. No, those projects need to be carried out now, today, and the cost for the maintenance and empowerment of those structures is substantially lower compared to establishing them, even when we also have a human lives toll paid in every natural disaster. Thank you so much.
Ms. Spiraki, you talked about the very interesting findings. The head of research, Faye Makadasi, is here, and she will give us more detail on that. But you also talked about figures that are related to our country, where we do well, where we don't do really well. Can we do better as a country? Clearly, yes, definitely, yes. And local governments are in charge of that. This is why it's so important to share best practices among EU member states. But allow me to say, but there is a key here, something that you do very well in Thessaly, and I'm talking about citizen involvement, awareness raising. You have to raise awareness among farmers about what is what is sustainable from the environment and what not. We have to find different ways to continue our agriculture in order to keep our croplands alive. And this is something that we have to talk about with the farmers involved, and we have to be bold, we have to be courageous into making this discussion with them. It's very important because it's about Greece, the Greece's food safety, it's about Europe's food safety. It's about something that can be really valuable to Greece. Thank you. I understand that your schedule doesn't allow you to stay for the QA, so I would like to thank you warmly, Ms. Spiraki, for this very interesting intervention. Yes, I would like to apologize, but I have a plane to catch. I would be more than happy to talk physically with you under better circumstances. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. Thank you, Ms. Spiraki. Now let's go back to Professor Zerefos, and let's now start the Q&A session. There was a question I asked Professor about whether we have to fight about land improvement works to sustain Thessaly for the decades to come. Well, yes. There is a program called Life IP, Life Adapt. It is a very optimistic, a very ambitious program that lasts for 8 years. There are 5 more years to go. Sure, Mr. Agorastos is aware of that because the region of Thessaly participates in this program. And there is also a law that imposed the development of adaptation and adjustment plans to climate change in all 13 regions of the country. Exceptional work has been done by the region of Thessaly, by the city of Larissa, by the prefecture of Larissa. Exceptional work has been done by all 13 regions of the country, and this is very good. Let me summarize that the problems that we will be called upon to tackle are heat waves, extreme weather phenomena, as those depicted in your video, and of course there will be the issue of drought, especially in eastern and southeastern Greece. This is something that we are currently investigating, researching. It's a major issue because, as you know, in our country there has always been shortage of water. There are a lot of issues to be handled. I can answer 1 to 2 questions because I'm running out of time. Are there any questions for Professor Zerefos from our friends that attend physically, our panelists? Well, what remains to be answered is no matter how good the head of the region is, there are some topics that for which the state is responsible, such as the Acheloos River issue. You're laughing because you recognize that I'm right. Yes, I'm very well aware of it. A lot of people ask the following simple question. When should we start worrying? Well, it's very clear that we should already be worried. My answer, already from the IPCC conference in Spain 2 years ago, is that when extreme weather phenomena become the usual thing, then there will be no room, no time to go back. We have to act now as long as extreme weather conditions are still considered to be extreme. Otherwise, there will be no time to go back. As to the water shortage and desertification, the cost, as you know, for climate change, as per the Bank of Greece research, the Academy of Athens, together with other organizations from the rest of the country, expert organizations, the cost for Greece is more than 700 billion euros unless nothing is done. If we adapt, the cost is around half of the number already mentioned, and if we adapt and if all countries adapt, then the cost will be about 300 billion euros, a number equal to our debt, to our external debt. So we will have more debt if we don't do anything about climate change. We have to protect ourselves, protect our health, protect our country and the future generations. And to do that, we need to know how to handle extreme weather conditions, how to protect our products, our agricultural areas against all these major, radical and very dangerous changes. Thank you, Professor. Christodoulos, the former Archbishop of Greece, was very often talking about the combination of sadness and happiness. The same applies to your speech, because you started very pessimistically, but you did say that there is time for us if we act. Hope never dies, and we will keep having hope for Greece, and as long as there are Greeks that love Greece and protect Greece, hope will never die. Thank you. And congratulations, thank you, and congratulations for this event. Give me a moment, Professor, because there's a question from the audience. The question is off the microphone. I hope that the moderator will repeat it. Thank you. That's it. We'd never get to hear the comment off the microphone. Thank you, Professor. So, natural disaster. Is this the new regularity? This will be the question debated by Ephthimis Lekas, Professor of Applied Geology and Natural Disaster Management. Another speaker in this panel will be Christos Triadopoulos, Deputy Minister, we will talk about the climate crisis and the 3 pillars of the national plan. Mr. Lekas, the floor to you.
Δεν πειράζει, δεν θα έχω πλήρη παρουσίαση. Καλό μεσημέρι σε όλους.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank the head of the region for extending this kind invitation to visit our home country, Thessaly. The title of this presentation is whether natural disasters and disastrous weather phenomena will be the new regularity of the future, will be the new status quo, a new regularity that we will be experiencing over the decades to come. As we all know, at a global level, the global public opinion is worried about the exponentially disastrous consequences of global warming. We are talking about financial consequences, environmental consequences, and consequences that cost human lives. So public opinion is even more worried. 60% of the time spent by all media all around the world was devoted to natural disasters and extreme weather phenomena. And this proves the magnitude of the problem. This problem shouldn't normally exist because natural phenomena that helped life on our planet are the same natural phenomena that create disasters, that create consequences at a global level, as Professor Zerefos said, and as Ms. Spyraki said, there will be many climate migrants from certain countries to other countries. About 500 million people over the next 10 years. At a global level, just last year, more than 1,000 loss events with more than 100 casualties happened because of natural phenomena. The Sendai framework, it was a conference in Japan where decisions were made at a state level, but we talked about adjustment and resilience. We need to adapt to the evolving climate. Otherwise, consequences will increase. Out of our 60 missions all around the world, we acquired experience, and this experience allowed us to have an informed opinion on all natural disasters. Throughout our experience, after 1995, the UN classified risks and crises, and this new classification allows us to discern among the different risks and crises and the combination of these phenomena. So now we're talking about the climate crisis. It's not climate change, it now is climate crisis, because as we all know, the atmosphere of Earth changed quite often. There were radical, extreme changes, but this change in the atmosphere was caused by natural factors, and this change lasted many millions of years, and that was climate change. The biggest climate change was billions of years ago when it was the so-called Ice Age. Then other changes happened, smaller changes, but over the past 20 years there is a change which happens very, very quickly. So when we talk about changes, the small change that can be calculated is a change over over a period of 12,000 years. Back then, we could go from Athens to Aegina and Poros because the sea level was very low. On the contrary, 12,000 years later from now, we might need to go from Philero to Athens using a boat. So a climate change accounts for a period of over 12,000 years, as I said. This is why the current crisis is not a simple climate change. So we have to be clear about hazard, about vulnerability and risk. What's at stake? Risk is something that might appear, that hasn't yet appeared. Vulnerability is our own weakness to adjust to this new condition, or our ability to handle such a condition. And risk, is what will come in the future, is what's at stake. Unfortunately, these terms are used very badly by the press and by politicians. Very few people can make this distinction among hazard, vulnerability and risk. Another important point is risk management and crisis management. There are three pillars: prevention, preparedness, response, intervention. So, prevention and preparedness is before a disaster. Response and intervention is during a crisis, during a disaster. Let me give you some examples, some concrete examples to see where we stand. In 2017, the scientific community had almost no idea at all. We were seeing negative things coming, but we couldn't estimate the magnitude of an extreme weather phenomenon. So in 2017, there was the flash flood in Mandra, West Attica. It was an extreme weather phenomenon, 300 millimeters of precipitation in 13 hours. This couldn't have been predicted. The risk was very big, but also our vulnerability was huge, because in Mandra, in this area was developed within the stream of P.O.S.Π.Η.Ε.F. Therefore, the vulnerability was huge. And in Mandra is very representative of all the bad things that allowed the Greek society to, let's say, grow back in the 70s. Arbitration, lack of personal responsibility, lack of political responsibility, etc. So, 2017 was an alarm for us. A new data came up that the number of flood phenomena will increase even more. There will be more and more floods in the future. So, more extreme floods. That was evident in Mandra, as it was the case of human intervention. Factories, plants within the stream of P.O.S.Π.Η.Ε.F. There were many judicial proceedings for some of these buildings, but it takes more than 15 years for a case to be finalized in the Greek courts about whether a construction or a building is illegal illegally built or not. In February 2019, in Chania, the West Crete, we had very low barometer in the basin of Chania. What we couldn't estimate was the problem with landslide. So precipitation together with landslide. And the magnitude of the phenomenon was 60% greater compared to what we have planned or estimated. Bridges fell down, parts of the road were destroyed. So this was an event that was completely extreme. 8 bridges were destroyed at the same time.
In another case, in Chalkidiki in 2019, we saw that there was a low barometer stepping in and outside land. We would see that developing from the sea, and then in the land it would become decongested. Now, we saw that this is a phenomenon that could not be managed because it would recharge in sea and it would blow off its steam in the land. Now, in Evia, August 9th, it was in full summer. We had the installation of a low barometer above Chalkis that was extremely fierce. So we saw that in a very short period of time it developed huge precipitation heights. As a result, we had a huge flood event that water could not be absorbed. You can see the image. 6 bridges, modern constructions that were built over the past 20 years, and they were all destroyed. It's not that only one of them was destroyed because, okay, one might say that we have some problems in their construction. No, all of them fell apart. And we also had vulnerability issues. We saw that were extremely vulnerable. And why is that? Because we were exposed to this hazard because we had built on the estuary, and this estuary was described by Strabon 3,000 years ago. It was the estuary of this river, and we built on that. It became part of the city, and the consequences were fierce. Now, in 2019, in Kineta, we were lucky enough to show the development of those phenomena. What was the development? We had used drones to take a picture of this area. It was a random photograph before the fire, and after the fire we rephotographed that, and a year later we were also able to depict in further detail what happened with the rainfall. Now, what happened? Huge masses, 30 cubic meters in volume, were transferred for 1.5 kilometers due to extreme rainfall. So you could realize that in that case there was the system did not stand a chance. You can see the change here that will also be described in Thessaly. And you see that due to extreme phenomena and changes in the soil. What makes us worry is the combination of hydrological phenomena with the geodynamic phenomena, and that's a huge challenge. Of course, when we see the transfer of such high volumes of materials, bridges are not effective, nothing is effective, there is an overflow, and water spills over and destroys surfaces. Now, when it comes to the recent fires, you can see a process that one could go on and describe for hours, but I would like to talk only on the impact of the hydrogeomorphological phenomena. Last year, at the start of the vast wildfires that affected Greece, we had the following phenomenon. We had a combination of the geodynamic structure that led to all those slides in the Urania mountains being transported, and this was combined with the hydrogeomorphological structures, meaning that the geodynamic phenomena would push the Urania mountains, and then the Urania trying to threatened with the solution. And then we had the problem because we have the transfer of the refugees due to the fires a month ago. And you can see the church on the upper right side of the screen that was literally buried due to this change in the soil. And now, the latest phenomenon of IE.F. that affected Thessaly. That's a huge case study. Along with the head of the region, we were in constant consultation in order to see what happened. We had IE.F. on 16th September, started from the Gulf of Ivris, and then it went upwards towards the north, and then it entered the Ionian Islands, and then went further south. IE.F. did not reach Thessaly. What happened in Thessaly? Well, a branch of IE.F. that escaped its course visited Thessaly. It moved towards Laris and Thessaly, and at the same time, we also had an extremely cold stream that descended from Chalkidiki, and those two things met on top of Karditsa. And this is what happened, and we had extensive rainfall. It was an unexpected event, a random event, but normally we should be able to predict those events. So what did it translate into? It generated landslides and floods. Now, when it comes to the combination of those two different phenomena, you can see what the outcome is in Ionian Islands, Meters, and in Karditsa, because the same area that was destroyed by earthquakes back in 2014 was equally vulnerable and destroyed by IE.F. as well. This is the outcome of this combination of phenomena. I'm talking about phenomena that call for a new way of management, not the typical management we have been familiar with for the time being, the one that we need to adapt to. This brings us to Thessaly. You can see the Mouzaki Health Center and what happened. So this is something I have been discussing with the head of the region, and we're astonished by what happened. We saw that the morphology of the area has changed. The entire southeastern Pindus has changed. And you can see a big, you can see that this is the Rahula area. You can see that the flood stream has been fed due to the sediments, and this led to the largest landslide in Greece after the Amedian landslide, due to rainfall, due to this geodynamic events. Now, here, water went beyond the bridge that was built back in 1950, and the water level exceeded the level of the riverbed by 3 meters. And this also brought numerous sediments with them. You can see huge amounts of sediments. You can see the railway station. This is where how the water entered the city of Karditsa, and you can see the ultimate change. This picture is testament to this ultimate change. This is the official flood predictions in the ministry, and marked in red you can see the area that is expected to flood in the case of maximum rainfall of once in 1,000 years. Those are the official sketches. This was applicable in 2017, but in 2021 that's the valid image. You can see that the area that actually flooded was 3 times larger than the one included in the previous plans. You can see how large this area is, how wide it is, and this is once in 9,000 years. So this rain is a phenomenon that normally manifests once in 9,000 years. Can you imagine what it means? So I believe that the head of the region managed in the best possible way, and I would like now to conclude. What we came to realize last week is that when we completed the research we carried out for the region that focused on the recording of those phenomena, we saw we had 169 cases of landslides in Thessaly, and in general, we had 687 points of landslide. Let me show you those two maps. In the first map, you can see all the landslides that had been recorded since 1950 until today. I'm talking about the latest 70 years. In the second map, on the right side, you can see the landslides that happened due to IANOS. They are 4 times higher in number compared to the landslides that happened throughout the 70 years. And those things have been recorded. So you do realize how extensive this change has been, not only in the hydrometeorological environment, but also in the geodynamic environment. We have specialized practices in order to map those landslides, and I don't want to bore you anymore. I will conclude with the following. We do realize that from now on we will have to tackle not a single risk, but a combination of risks. And we will come across more extreme phenomena in time periods that could not have been calculated and with a higher impact on a social, financial and environmental levels. All those things call for a new approach in the management of risks and crises, something that will also include and consider the latest data that develop at a vast speed. Thank you, Professor, for that. Some comments from the audience that were off the microphone. And now we will also have Mr. Christos Triandopoulos, who will also going to make his presentation. He's the Deputy Minister to the Prime Minister. He's going to talk about the climate crisis, the 3 pillars of the National Management Plan. That's the title of Mr. Triandopoulos' presentation. And after that, I will give the floor to the audience. Okay, we won't have endless time, but I believe that we'll have some time to address some questions to the two speakers.
Good morning, Head of Region, dear friends, mayors. I'm sorry for the delay. Once again, in Thessaly, we are talking about climate change and its impact. It is a region which, in the past few years, has been at the heart of these adverse weather conditions. Thessaly is a region that has experienced the negative consequences of climate change. A climate change which makes it more possible than ever to experience extreme weather conditions, but also these extreme weather phenomena have increased intensity. And this is why the state, the government, had to implement a new strategy. And this is what we've done under the guidance of Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. We prepared a new strategy in order to handle the new conditions shaped by the climate crisis. There are 3 pillars in this strategy. The first pillar is about green and sustainable development in order to minimize the consequences in our financial activity and in our natural environment. This pillar includes important initiatives at a European and international level, starting from recycling, green bonds, the new climate law, and a series of other policies and objectives that have been set in order for our country to be a pioneer in the EU when it comes to green development, green growth. The second pillar is about preparedness readiness, resilience. An emphasis is given to protection against fires, against floods, and this is why the new ministry has been created, the Ministry of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection. In the past, we used to have a General Secretariat of Civil Protection. But we do believe this issue very important. This is why the General Secretariat was upgraded to a ministry. Prevention will be our top priority. Prevention is not just in theory. We implement it in practice in cooperation with the fire brigade, in cooperation with the executives of our ministry. The third pillar is the pillar that follows natural disasters, and it is about restoration and provision of support. A new philosophy is promoted in this respect, and under this new mindset, support must be quick and fairly allocated to all victims without the delays experienced in the past. Also, remediation, restoration will be achieved as soon as possible, and it will be sustainable. Restoration will be based on state-funded projects and works that will be sustainable and will not fall apart in the next extreme rainfall. That's the framework of our new strategy. We shape this strategy based on our experience from Thessaly and other Greek regions, in order to create the conditions for the victims to receive immediate support, subsidies and compensation, always in a fair manner to support the citizens that had experienced the flood of Ianos and other extreme phenomena. This framework is under development. We introduce digitization processes. A new platform called arogi.org was developed that allowed citizens to apply for compensation and subsidies. So it was a platform for citizens to quickly receive immediate support after a certain natural disaster such as an earthquake, a flood, etc. At the same time, there are targeted measures to support businesses where necessary, to support farmers where necessary. One of these measures includes support to enterprises that's related to the region of Thessaly that has experienced a huge earthquake, in cooperation with the Ministry of Investment and Development. These measures have been implemented in the past, generalized support measures that are sometimes horizontal or other times they are targeted to specific sectors that need immediate support. Of course, there is a fiscal cost for this strategy. We need to know what this cost is, the cost of climate crisis or the cost of our failure to prevent such disasters. Only for Ianos, the cost so far reaches 750 million euros. This is a medium to long-term cost, including commitments, resources, disbursements. As you can understand from the amount mentioned, this is something that's on the state budget. And it is on the state budget because a large part of this funding comes from our national resources and not from EU funds, as one might have imagined. And why one might have imagined that? Because climate crisis, climate change is a horizontal condition that influences the entire continent, the entire globe. Of course, in our country, one needs to acknowledge that apart from the consequences of the climate crisis, there is an extra natural disaster to be taken into account, and I'm talking about earthquakes. A lot of fiscal resources have been allocated to the remediation of earthquakes, such as the earthquake in Crete at Arkalahori, which has reached a cost of 250 million. $250 million have been given for the remediation of the area of Evia after the wildfires, and there are other cases as well, such as the earthquake in Samos or the floods in other regions of Greece. So if we take into account all these different cases, the fiscal cost increases by far, and it is an increased cost not only because we want to just support the inflicted areas and remediate the natural environment. It is an increased cost because, and I repeat, we want these works, these projects to be sustainable, not to fall apart in the next flood or extreme weather phenomenon. When it comes to floods in Thessaly, in close cooperation with the region of Thessaly and the head of the region, Mr. Agorastos, let me tell you that the implementation and the success of such a project is based on the level of cooperation that can be achieved among the various stakeholders. As mentioned in the Delphi Economic Forum, cooperation is crucial. When we have constructive, automatic cooperation of all government levels, municipality, region, central government, and all stakeholders, then the results that are achieved are the best possible for the citizens. To this end, in Thessaly, we continue to provide extraordinary funding to the region for anti-flood projects. These projects were found to be resilient in the previous floods. There is also a new dam that is being constructed, and other projects that are related to smaller dams for the irrigation and the water supply in the area. And there are also small interventions in the prefecture of Magnesia and in other areas in Thessaly. How is this cost related to the EU aspect, to the EU dimension? Well, such horizontal universal problems demand horizontal and universal solutions. It is like the case of the pandemic. The EU made significant integration steps to tackle the pandemic at a European level. The same applies to the climate crisis. And let me focus on three elements of this crisis. The first one is the Solidarity Fund of the European Union. Unfortunately, its assistance, its support to the inflicted areas is not as it should. For example, we already talked about the cost of IANOS, amounting to 750 billion. The Solidarity Fund gave just 22 million, so there is a very big difference. So there are a series of procedures, of funds that should be more abundant. There are also a series of parameters, because the EU support system does not provide subsidies and compensation, for example, for individuals, enterprises, farmers, etc. It only provides for reparation of infrastructure. So a big discussion should happen at an EU level in order to provide a universal support throughout the EU. And such support should include, of course, prevention. Prevention in order to save our resources, our environment and our societies. Already to this end, the Solidarity Fund has made some steps for, I'm sorry, the speaker says, it's not the Solidarity Fund, it's the Recovery and Resilience Fund that has allocated funds to Greece. Governments and local governments should use these funds at maximum and also receive even more funds. More funds should be allocated to prevention, and if this happens, fewer funds will have to be allocated for remediation and reparation. Because nothing can in fact compensate for the damage when something happens. So the only way to actually prevent such damages is to allocate as many funds as possible to prevention. And my final point is that we need to now adapt our works to the new conditions. So the EU debate should include two dimensions. The first one is maintenance. The already completed works need to be maintained. We have to reinforce their maintenance in order to reinforce their resilience. And secondly, the new works that are underway should be harmonized with the new conditions that lie ahead. And let's not forget that these conditions might worsen over the period to come. So we have to further reinforce the resilience of all new works. So these are issues that are already in the public agenda. They are being discussed in public and international fora. And as time goes by, they will be implemented. Thank you once again. I'm available to answer any questions.
Well, climate change is the major global challenge in Europe. The Eurobarometer asked from Greeks to address this issue, and in 2 minutes we will see how we, as citizens, deal with climate change. The Eurobarometer on January 26, 2022 indicates that 91% of people aged 15 to 24 years old believe that the management of climate change can contribute to the improvement of their health and prosperity. 84% of people aged 55 and above agree. Half Europeans believe that climate change is the main global challenge for the future of the European Union. The Europeans support almost universally the environmental goals set in the European Green Deal. The 88% believes that it's important to increase our energy efficiency and the share of renewable energy sources and the production of energy. And more than 1 in 2 young people believe that climate change is the main challenge for the future of the EU. Environmental issues and climate change rank very first in the list of challenges faced by the European Union. They have been reported by 32% of people asked. In Greece, health and climate change are inextricably linked as a global challenge for the future of the EU. Almost all Greeks, 94%, believe that tackling climate change can contribute to the improvement of their health and prosperity. 90% of Greeks support the reinforcement of RES involvement in the economy and the increase of energy performance. Greeks comply with the European average in their pursuit of making Europe the first climate-neutral continent until by 2050 and develop the vehicle of zero and low-emission vehicles. Well, we'll be back on our agenda, and given that this is live streamed in the official EPP webpage in both languages, in Greek and in English, because we also have simultaneous interpretation and we need to stick to our time, I believe that we can listen to your questions. Questions only, not statements, please. Yes, Mr. Apostolis, you have the floor. Hello. My question is very specific. It is linked to the main political scene in our country and the scientific background that we should all have. I am a health professional, but I also work in the university, so I believe that the climate change is something that affects the lives of people, so we need to support them. Well, congratulations in any case for this event that you organized. Now, my question, what's your opinion in terms of the political and financial development with regard to the parallel and simultaneous development of micro dams? I'm talking about simultaneous and parallel development of smaller dams, and I'm talking about projects running parallel with the big dams in Skopje, for example. So this is a question addressed to Mr. Lekas, because you understand that not all three speakers can answer that, okay? Mr. Lekas, you have the floor. Please be very succinct. Mr. Lekas is off the microphone, so we cannot hear him. Well, thank you for this point of yours. The smaller micro dams are very effective because they also provide water to the underground water reservoir. They need to be combined with the larger dams, and on top of that, a planning is required in order to see what happens in terms of the location. Because in Chios Island, Monemvasia, Evia, where wildfires have also taken place or extreme weather conditions have manifested, we need to choose very carefully and on the basis of innovative methods the location of those bigger or smaller dams. And you do realize that in environmental terms, sometimes things are more difficult to locate, but in any way, I believe that the location is key. Thank you for being very brief, Professor. Yes, please, next question. The question is off the microphone. The microphone is closed. I'm afraid we cannot interpret that. The question was off the microphone, but the Deputy Minister will give an answer. Well, I don't know what you expect to hear. You know that this is big work that has been going on for decades now. We know that we have faced the usual challenges, and we, as a government, as you know, it's something that we carefully consider. From that point on, there are other issues that come up in terms of the management of resources in the plain of Thessaly. Those things are being carefully considered in collaboration with the head of region, because everything needs to be considered jointly. Thank you, Deputy Minister. Well, before starting this event, the professor and myself had a discussion that would blow the schedule off, because 2 weeks are left for the Easter. Why bring all doom and gloom here in our hearts? Well, we are here to elaborate on things that should be discussed in detail. everything that we're currently experiencing, floods, wildfires, will be combined with more frequent occurrence of earthquakes. That's a wonderful mix. Of course, that's an irony, you do realize that. Now, we saw from the PowerPoint of the professor what's the impact of IANOS on Western Thessaly at Karditsa. And in the next video, we will see what happens on the field. Let's watch the video. That's the overflow at Karditsa, destructions in rivers, destructions in the road network, interventions, the damage restoration works carried out in rivers, restoration and repair works in the road network. Those are images from the various bridges and dams. Okay, this has been the impact of IANOS. This is the current image until today, because we know that interventions are ongoing. Before giving the floor to the head of region, who is our host, let's watch another impressive 15 seconds video that was also displayed in the Delphi Economic Forum, and it generated a discussion about how we see an inflow of all those masses brought forward by the water professor, and this inflow leads to the floods that we know here in Greece. So, you saw the time-lapse image of how an entire region flooded. Now, head of region, you have the floor. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the European People's Party, the European Committee of the Regions, because they offer us the possibility to communicate with the entire Europe. I would also like to thank Christos Triandopoulos for being here with us, Ephthimis Lekas, Feima Kadasi, as well as everyone else involved, Mr. Zerefos, who have been with us, and everyone who is with us. And I would like to thank the church representatives, the mayors, the head of the fire brigade, and the army, the hospitals, civil protection, the Secretary General of the decentralized administration, as well as the mayors of the Chamber of Karditsa, because we know that they have been very active. And I would also like to thank everyone who attends this event, either physically or online, through the YouTube channel, the EPP webpage, and Facebook. Well, climate crisis. We know that this stands for the major challenge of our times. And we know that this also causes long-term and sometimes irreversible and constantly increasing negative impact. Now, when it comes to the success or failure to tackle it, will have substantial consequences on the current and future generations. Greece is a country with a very low impact, low footprint on climate crisis development. But we see that our country is extremely vulnerable to its consequences. So, we need development policies that will rely on low-carbon technologies and effective adjustment policies, because we have an ongoing climate crisis. And the head of region said, like we heard before, when we were given a mandate to undertake the cleansing of the rivers, I went to the Supreme Court public prosecutor and said that we have received this mandate without having received the necessary resources. Since early 2012, we had given out a warning of the fact that climate crisis has also sent warnings. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and we said that we cannot afford not having the right infrastructure in the mountainous area. If those works are not completed or until repaired, I'm talking about the Acheloos River water transfer works, and they are now in 65% in terms of their progress. The Sika is at 35%. The most difficult works have been completed, and we have those limited things that have not been completed yet. Now, if we do not shield the area, if they're not completed, meaning that they are able to perform well, the negative impact is definitely on the agenda. And I'm talking about the downstream area. I'm talking about Mouzaki, Karditsa, and the entire plain up until Farsala. So, we sent multiple warnings. No one listened to us. And I'm afraid that right now we have a committee that is working rigorously on the Acheloos project. That's a difficult project, because in that case they have followed a policy that, I'm afraid, did not allow for the completion of this work unless the main parameters would change. I'm talking about the slabstones, the basins, the water drainage basins, etc. Well, of course, I must say that the Mesahora project has moved forward, but normally this should have been advanced a lot earlier, because we do realize that this might alter the stream, and etc., etc. This has a domino effect. Right now, we have the hydroelectric plants, which are the solution for energy, and we can also have the reservoir pumping infrastructure that could offer 600 megawatts. And we know that Mr. Trentopoulos is working towards this direction. And I know that I'm not here to argue with anyone. The Acheloos project is a project that is very important, because water management is key. Why is that? Because today rivers run out of water. You can see what happens in P.O.S.P.I.E.F. River with a double duration of a drought. And you can see the soil becomes drier, becomes harder, the air is polluted. And now we are faced with a biological problem. A biological problem cannot be addressed through revolution and rebels. No. We need to raise awareness among the people. We need to call for synergies. And at the same time, we need to be reasonable. The point here is to avoid having the common reason prevailing. I'm talking about a common reason that followed a different path that simply led to no conclusion. And this has been a result that has been disseminated across the society. However, many people say that, what did you do? Well, the smaller projects have moved forward. We have the Kala Lake, we have helped people, and right now there is no problem with the energy price because they don't have to pay for energy in order to water their farms. We have also turned the entire network an underground network. The same happens to Castries. And at this point, I would like to thank the government and the deputy minister because they helped unblock some of those projects. Because, okay, we have heard the common myths, okay, we have the Dam of Achilles, let the other smaller dams aside, but the added value comes through all those dams, because water should enter the dams in order to save it. The dam, like we heard at Skopje, has moved forward, the same applies to the Dam of illuminate. It is part of the mayor, the content mayor, who is doing everything he can to lobby and help the project move forward. The dam at Achlavechouri has also progressed, at Neochoritis, another dam at Titanos, another dam at Litheus River, another dam at Neochoritis, as I mentioned before. Anyway, all these projects have progressed. And now we are trying to see what happens at Muzaki. Okay, all those things have been set in motion and are now underway. And we also have a dam at Muzaki and at Pili. We're trying to lobby that, and we need to have the dam at Pili being built as well. Apart from that, when it comes to climate, the major Green Deal project in Europe is Achilles River.
And why is that? Because very quickly it can provide water, energy, tourism and environment. When Karwa was semi-drought, it was the source of environmental pollution, but now it's full of fish. Unless we had the lake in Karditsa, I'm talking about Lake Plastira, we would never have completed it. But Lake Plastira is the only source of life in Karditsa. It is a point of reference. And Karditsa gains an advantage thanks to this lake. We have started call for tenders for energy-saving projects and the energy upgrading of public hospitals, public buildings, schools, etc., which account for less CO2 footprint. We have changed all our road lamps to LED lamps. So we managed to save energy and to emit less CO2. And of course, there are 3 units for the management of waste in Trikala, Larissa and Karditsa, and they are underway. They are being constructed. So we have started projects to protect our environment, the home of everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is a shock for the economy. For example, sudden landslides, floods, disasters for the business world, for the farming world, for everyone. In Thessaly and especially in Karditsa, an unprecedented phenomenon took place. That night, back then, with the assistance of the police, of the army, of the fire service, with the assistance of everybody, the people from civil protection, we managed to save more than 1,600 people in Thessaly under very difficult circumstances. Yes, but the disaster was huge. The natural disaster was huge. Did we do nothing? No. From day one, the region of Thessaly was operating in 185 points. We started building a plan to handle the crisis and provide assistance to the victims of the disaster. And we did that respectfully and showing great interest to the victims of the disasters. This is why the Ministry of Infrastructure immediately took steps together with us. We received funds from the Ministry of Infrastructure and from the Fund of Social Welfare, both in the case of Ianos and Diomedes, and also after the earthquake, of course. For the first time, we very quickly opened an electronic platform for everyone to submit their application. All businesses, all inflicted businesses received 8,000 euros from the ministry. But at the same time, we launched an innovative process. All employees of the region were out in the field making assessments, difficult assessments from the next day of the disaster. And why were they difficult? Because there were many distortions. And the Chamber of Karditsa is very well aware of that, of the situation we had to face. So an advance payment was given to businesses and compensation was given, and the amount of the compensation increased. Let's now go to agriculture. Farmers and agriculturers received compensation for the loss of their production, for the loss of their equipment, their drills, the products that were in their warehouses, etc. And we received support thanks to the new legal provisions. There was this very big amount that was given during the pandemic to all businesses under very favorable conditions within 6 years, and just 20% of the amount received. And in Karditsa, many businesses that don't meet the requirements were included in the pool of those compensated. And of course, very quickly, we started the remediation process, the reparation process. We assigned the project also to the company called Terna to remediate the river, roads, bridges, etc. From day one, we were present and we managed to provide immediate support and remediate either temporarily or permanently access to all areas. Of course, we needed cooperation to achieve that. Everybody worked together. So, with IANOS, we managed to set the foundation for a different welfare state. A state that adapts to the climate crisis and the climate change. A state that now responds very quickly. And this is thanks to cooperation of all involved stakeholders. And we did that respectfully with great understanding to all victims and regardless of the political cost. And we always had in mind Heraclitus. That used to say that if you don't look for it, you will never find what's impossible. And we did, and we managed to find the impossible and do it. Of course, more projects are needed, but research needs to be done before implementing any project. This is why FEMACADAS is here. But we also need technical investigation, technical studies. Ευθύμης Lekas showed you the map that was developed by the Ministry and was approved by the Ministry and the European Commission. Karditsa was not existent. The map included Neapoli at Volos. The map included the Π.Ο.Σ.Π.Η.Ε.Φ River, where there are ongoing works. The map included the Megas River, in which we managed to widen its banks. And of course, there was an alarm for Limni Karga, and we managed to build that lake. So we had already completed the project suggested by the ministry, but we did extra works to have 2 more minutes. Well, okay, I don't, but I will use them. The only certain thing is uncertainty. Can we predict uncertainty? Well, we need to stick to a Build Back Better philosophy. We need to foresee the trends and risks that lie ahead. We need to establish a new relationship with time, meaning speed. We need speed. We need good cooperation, good partnerships. We need automated processes, simplification of processes and actions and activities. And more importantly, regarding climate change, which will bring about more migrants, which is a shock for the real economy. So what's needed is renewable energy sources. We need renewable energy sources, first and foremost from water, hydroelectric projects, because this allows for production at peak hours for many years without causing any problem to the farming and agricultural sector. Moreover, we need self-sufficiency in water, energy and food. And how is this going to be achieved? They are interlinked. They are the chains of the same chain that should never be disrupted. And of course, sufficiency for businesses is necessary. Businesses have received a huge blow, but we have to be able to allow them to produce power, not for profit, but in order to ensure their cooperation. That should be the priority. We should prioritize the production of power from businesses in order for them to ensure their operation. So we need to provide organized entities with the possibility of producing power for themselves. Not for profit, I repeat, but in order to ensure their operation and their production. RES is going to contribute to climate neutrality, which is a sine qua non condition to tackle climate change, while natural gas, nuclear energy make the situation even more harder. Europe will become independent in terms of energy, independent from geopolitical pressures, only thanks to renewable energy sources. Time is of essence, and any delay will cost in human lives and in billions of euros because of the destruction of infrastructure. So the development of RES and clean energy should be supported by the European mechanism of resiliency and become part of our economic recovery. Europe needs two directions: RES and also works that will provide us against floods, will protect us against floods. These type of works are now subsidized through the government. 40 million have been allocated to the reparation of bridges, roads, and the cleaning of rivers, which are under our responsibility. But we do that regardless of our area of responsibility. In cooperation with our mayors who are present here, we work seamlessly together in order to ensure that all necessary actions will be taken. So right now we have to remedy past problems and also prepare for the future. And on this note, I would like to thank everyone present here, the representatives of the army, of the armed forces, of the fire brigade. It's true that our cooperation, our partnership is seamless, and this is why we manage to save lives, reduce risks, and provide a feeling of safety among our citizens. Allow me to conclude with a final point. We worked systematically, we worked strategically, and when we took office in 2011, there was huge pollution in our rivers. We worked systematically without causing problems to production. We managed to introduce biological cleaning systems using targeted policies. And this was the way we moved forward. This is why conditions are better in our rivers today. Climate change is an issue that is of major concern, of course, if we want to ensure life for the kids that have not yet been born. Thank you very much. Thank you, head of the region. Earlier, at the beginning of our event, Ms. Spyraki talked and used some data from the research undertaken by the Aneosis. Of course, the head of research, Dr. Faye Makadasi, will give us more details on that research. The ANEOSI, if you're not aware of this organization, is an organization that does not document the condition in the environment, in the legal landscape. It also makes suggestions, it makes proposals to the administration. It proposes tools. So it's not only about its findings, it's not only about documenting the status quo, it's about suggesting a set of tools. Let's now welcome to our company Dr. Faye Makadasi.
Hello everyone, I would like to warmly thank the organizers for extending this invitation, as well as the head of region, Mr. Agorastos. I believe that in some time I will also ask to become an honorary citizen of Larissa. I literally live in Thessaly. It is with great pleasure that I find myself here. So I will try to give you an overview of what we published only yesterday, the big survey that has been run in our organization since 2015, since the research organization started operating. It has to do with the opinions and perspectives of Greek women and men regarding the various issues that extend from what we believe for the European Union, what we think of the rights, ideas, beliefs and concepts. It is an extensive survey, and the second part, because it includes two parts, will be published next week. I would like to share with you some data regarding what Greeks think of the following, because our goal is to implement reforms, and those reforms are part of a collective intelligence. And this is why it is important to listen to the perspectives of people, of the society. So we need to have an overview of what the Greek society believes. And we are trying to depict here what Greeks think and share. So, in a question, which is the biggest threat for the future of Greeks, we have the demographic problem, relations with Turkey, the financial status of our country, and the climate change ranks 5th. But when we move forward to see the biggest threat all around the planet, not only for Greece, but also for the entire planet, you can see on the right-sided chart that in 2019, because this survey had been repeated in December 2019, we had climate change and the environmental pollution ranking first, almost first, because we saw that climate change is the biggest threat for the generations to come on our planet. However, right now we have a war going on, so Greeks now believe that the major threat is, of course, armed conflict. It is equally important to see that the vast majority of Greeks, more than 93%, believe that climate change either is currently affecting or will negatively affect their quality of life and the quality of life of their family. And when asked which of the following environment protection actions do you adopt personally, well, you can see that we have huge percentages in the choice of energy-saving lamps, recycling. They limit the use of plastic, and this also has to do with participation in reforestation activities and cleaning. Okay, this is just a parenthesis because, like I said before, it is very important to know where we're going to implement those policies and which are the policies required. We want to raise awareness among citizens regarding the changes that will take place. And on this occasion, I would also like to say that in collaboration with the Ministry of Civil Protection, we are also considering through a quality survey and a quantitative survey to find out more about the detailed perspectives of citizens in climate change issues. In that way, we want to develop a national strategy on climate change. In a survey that we carried out in collaboration with the University of Athens and the team led by Mr. Kartalis regarding the impact of climate change, and I will try to be as brief as possible without using technical terms. In this survey, they examined 21 climate indices and markers. They ran an extensive analysis in numerous areas, and this is a study that had started back in 2016. Because we know that this whole climate change issue ranks very high in our agenda. So, in the latest survey that was published in 2020, and following a more detailed analysis, when it comes to the mid-century evaluation, so we see that temperature will increase from 2 degrees Celsius, that's the optimistic scenario. It's the RCP45 that Mr. Zarefos was talking about at the beginning, and what does it mean? It means that in 1 million parts of atmospheric air, 484 parts consist of carbon dioxide. Well, no, the optimistic scenario says that the temperature will increase from 2 degrees Celsius up to 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, according to the pessimistic scenario. Extreme hot days in Greece would increase by 15 to 20 days per year. Rainfall will drop by 10 up to 30%. The days for high risk of fire will increase from 15 to 70%. That's something that we have already experienced. My hometown is in Northern Evia. We experienced that last summer. So we see a 15 to 70% increase. Extreme weather conditions will become more frequent, more intense. They will last longer. Mr. Lekas mentioned that before. It is possible to see an increase in the sea level height from 80 centimeters up to 2 meters until the end of the century. Can you imagine that 1/3 of Greek people live at 2-meter distance from the shore, and the majority of the tourism infrastructure of our country are located across the coastline, so you can realize what's the social and financial impact of that. Mr. Apostolinas also asked a question, and he said that 5.5 million people, 5.5 million Greek people who live in the 25 largest cities in Greece will face worse heat-related conditions. What does it mean? It means that if the temperature increases by 1 degree Celsius, then we will also be faced with an increase in cooling needs by 12%, increase of air pollutants by 7%, and an increase of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases by 8%. So you do realize what this extra burden will bring about in the healthcare system. Now, when it comes to the general estimates for Thessaly, according to the pessimistic scenario, the average annual temperature will increase by 1.4 degrees Celsius in the period 2026-2045, and by 2.4 degrees Celsius in the over the next 20 years, 2046 to 2065. in comparison to the average annual temperature 1971 to 2000. Well, I know that I don't have much time, okay, I'll need to run. Okay, I know that this is not the best possible scenario for the generations to come. However, in the long run, everyone will be dead, so it's okay. The head of region asked for this the return of the refundable of this subsidy offered by the state will not apply. That's a good measure. Now, when it comes now to the period 2026 to 2045, we have an increase of the average annual temperature by 1.2%, always in comparison to what happened in the 30 years between 1971 and 2000. The Dianesis survey has looked into the impact on critical sectors of Greece. We saw what happens in the primary sector, the tourism. We have seen the impact of the citizens' quality of life. Now, when it comes to Thessaly, we now have another scenario providing for an increase by 6 to 10% of the duration of the period that where the plants are growing, meaning that we will have a positive impact on farming and agriculture. You can see the various days of growth that will increase by 15 to 20% over the period 2026-2045. Well, climate will become more dry in the future on the basis of the SPEI index that will have a negative impact on agricultural activity and leading to an increase in water and irrigation needs. So it would be useful for producers to consider all those changes today in order to adapt their crops. We know that specialists should be on their side. At the analysis, we tried to look into the water management issue because we know that 80 to 85% of the water consumed in our country is dedicated to the primary sector. So you do realize that they play a major role. They need to manage the land improvement works. This is why our research team and us participate in the restoration of Karditsa after Ionos, and we provide know-how with regards to the management of TOEVs. And we know that usually we're looking for the best practices. And those are the best practices that sometimes are being adopted without them being fit to our mentality or conditions. The most important thing is that there is a best practice. We do have a good example at the area of Karditsa with technologically advanced. And now, I'd like to move forward because I have more time. When it comes to tourism and living in the city, we will have an average of 5 more hot incidents per year in the cities in Thessaly. According to the more pessimistic scenario, they will increase more. In the period of 1971 to 2000, we only had 2 such incidents per year. According to the pessimistic scenario, there is an increase of by 35% of the days where cooling is needed. Of course, this also means that energy consumption will increase respectively. This is very important because we talk about prevention, restoration. Let's talk about mitigation as well, meaning what each and every one of us can do in order to reduce the carbon footprint. Ms. Spyraki talked about it at the beginning. She said that the contribution of Greece in terms of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide is 0.18%. That's slightly higher compared to our population As part of the world population, it's 0.13%. We do realize that the contribution of Greece is very low, but we need to do a lot to save energy. You do realize that the cheapest energy is the energy that is not consumed, and how can we refrain from consuming energy when we upgrade our residences, when businesses upgrade their premises. And there is another survey of Elva back in 2018 saying that 45% of buildings in Greece are not insulated. So you do realize the loss and energy consumption, how energy intensive our houses and businesses are. When I read that, I heard that a solar panel for a 4-member family reduces by 1,700 kilograms per year the CO2 emissions. An electric vehicle leads to 1,400 kilograms per year. So you do realize that electric vehicles are not built in Greece. However, we do have 22 companies that create solar water heaters. They employ thousands of people, and 50% of their production is exported to other countries, China, US, Israel, etc. Yes, I will conclude my presentation. As is the case with all the analysis surveys, the climate change surveys conclude 2 policy proposals in the short term, long term, in order to relaunch economy. Let's start with, well, you can see here the titles. This is a 300-page long survey, so you do realize that 10 minutes is not enough. However, feel free to visit theanalysis.org in order to find out more or read the full text. It's everything available. You can see here the reform of the institutional framework of our country to consider the climate change, simplification of licensing framework that has to do with the special aspects of investments. I'm talking about the licensing process before and after the production permit. I'm talking about RES-based production of power, as well as the environmental impact case study, improvement of energy performance in transport, industry and buildings through the establishment of more specific goals for each category, the restoration of trust of local societies to RES projects. It is very important to have the society on board across the entire process of restoration. We need to hold public consultation, so that is something that the entire society will benefit from. Let's continue with the creation of plans for the adjustment to climate change in terms of tourism, because we know that tourism is the heavy industry, the so-called heavy industry of our country. Establishment of special management plans to protect the agricultural production, giving priority to the plain-related areas of Central Macedonia and Thessaly. Establishment and application of climate change adjustment plans in the cities with a view to ensuring a temperature drop by 1 degree Celsius. You saw what such an increase would mean. And of course, we also need to include the climate parameter in the design of the new infrastructure program. We do have such a program for critical infrastructure, but now we need to see how we can benefit from that comprehensively. And the mid-term policy proposals include the following. We need to incentivize for investments that will contribute to ensure climate-neutral economy in 2050, laying emphasis on investments of high domestic added value. We need to improve the energy safety of our country with gradual reduction of the input rates of gas and diesel. We need also to promote the interconnection of islands as well as the storage of RES-generated power. And we also need to leverage public and private sector businesses, and they need to prepare because the system for the emissions trading scheme will become stricter, and we also need to revisit the institutional framework to reinforce private investments in order to include the aspect of climate change. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ms. Makadasi, and thank you for the exceptional work you are doing in diagnosis. We will hear recorded messages from Margaritis Chinas, the Vice President of the European Commission, and from Christos Stylianidis, the Minister of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection. But before that, let's have a very quick Q&A session. Yes, please. Please use a microphone. The question should be addressed to Mr. Agorastos or Ms. Makadasi. If we have an estimate regarding the desertification of the Thessaly fields, what is the estimate and what will be the future plan in such case? What would that mean for us? My second question is to the head of the region. Among the recommendations by diagnosis, we can see the inclusion and the involvement of citizens in the RES process, RES development process. But you, as head of region, you had a similar discussion. The comments were off the microphone. We are not against RES, of course. We are in favor of balance, though. We should be able to strike a balance among farming, agriculture, and production. Where RES create a problem for the food chain, we will be against. We cannot create precarious and temporary conditions that will turn into permanent ones, and we will have to handle them in the future. There are areas that are not croplands, that are not for farming, and those areas can be utilized for RES. And as I said before, we are very much in favor of hydroelectric projects because they are much more beneficial. Their added value is greater. And it allows you also to create a pool of water, which is very useful in flood cases as well. And it does not impede the agricultural production and the farming. And it also allows for the public power corporation or any other private company to use such projects to produce power for the entire country. We are in favor of RES, but at the right spots. This is not El Dorado. In 10 years, the extent of desertification in the Thessaly region will have doubled. So this is our estimate. Right now it's about 25%. And it will reach 50%. If all those planned interventions are implemented, and let's not forget that if these projects are not implemented, that would be a huge problem for the local society as well. So there are pros from these projects for everybody. So through an integrated concrete approach, the acceleration rate of desertification will slow down. Thank you. First of all, our head of region talked about big projects against climate change or in response to climate crisis in cooperation with local stakeholders. He talked about infrastructure projects. He talked about a lot of things. Yes, those interventions are very important. My only question to Ms. Makadasi is the following. Does your study take into account the holistic approach to environment regarding the future? This is part of the recommendations that the administration should adjust and reinvent its strategy and ensure a holistic strategy. When it comes to holistic models, they are more difficult to implement, but yes, you do grasp the entire idea, the entire approach, but then you have to act at a micro level. The ultimate goal is precisely what you've described. Unless there are any other questions, you have to understand that we should move forward. This is not a goodbye. We have few seats because this is a hybrid event. So the European People's Party asked for so few seats. We would very much like to have a huge room. Many people are not here, were not invited, that of course are interested in what we are talking about. There were certain requirements that we had to be met given the health crisis. As I said, the floor will be given to Christos Stylianidis and Margaritis Chinas, the Vice President of the European Commission. Let's first watch the recorded message by Dimitris Kalkos, the Secretary General of Public Works and Partnership Agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank the head of region, my dear friend Kostas Agorastos, for his kind invitation to participate in today's event of the European People's Party on climate crisis and climate change. Allow me also to apologize because I wasn't able to attend physically the event as it was originally planned. Of course, the consequences of the climate crisis are disastrous. I'm certain that all previous speakers and the speakers to come will provide more clarity in that. So let me just highlight the urgent nature of the issue as highlighted by the report of the IPCC published in last February. We have a very short and ever-shrinking room to act before climate change is non-reversible. Allow me to focus on three issues that I would like to stress. The first one is about the allocation of resources and funds to handle the climate crisis. The productive transformation of economy towards climate resilient development is a sine qua non condition in order to survive over the next decades. It is very important to receive the necessary funds in order to smoothly adjust to the situation. The demands for public and private investments are huge. Before the skyrocketing of the energy cost, we needed projects accounting for more than 2% of the EU GDP. The second issue I would like to talk about is about our country's policies. We try to be at the forefront of initiatives. Greece has already adopted an ambitious plan to adjust to the climate crisis. The infamous Greek Energy and Resilience Plan, and that's the way to go forward until 2030 in the medium term and 2050 on the long term. In this framework, we use all available financing instruments, focusing on the Recovery and Resilience Fund, and 37% of these funds will go to the tackling of climate change and the building of resilience. There are also other EU programs that provide funds to this end. The Greek Plan for Clean Energy and Green Economy focuses on the rational use of resources, the development of RES, electric mobility, greening of our islands, the tackling of energy poverty, and the protection of biodiversity. The third issue I would like to talk about is about the important role of the European Union. As already mentioned by Jean Monnet, the big visionary of the European integration plan, Europe is forged in the midst of crisis, and we have taken bold steps forward. Let's talk about the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which was also the mutualization of debt. What is more, the Ukrainian crisis has brought forward debates about even more integration. It becomes even more important to become energy independent in Europe. Further to the initiatives of Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, we are looking forward to the initiatives that will be undertaken by the European Union to this end. European solidarity is expressed at many levels. It goes without saying that energy crisis requires coordinated efforts and actions from all EU member states. And that's what we should do in the years to come, ensure European solidarity. In this respect, energy union is an important goal that should be supported by the European People's Party. Everybody in Greece is looking forward to this debate. Having said that, that's all on my part. I don't want to bore you with many details. Yes, data are pessimistic, but I do believe that we are willing to change direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Skalkas. Now, we have Mr. Zarafos and Mr. Lekas, both professors, who talked about this scenario that provides for an increase of temperature all around the world by 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we saw that this might also get as high as 2.4 degrees Celsius. Now, let's look into the special report and what will happen in Greece. Let's see what will happen in that case. In 2021, we had the sixth warmest year, along with 2018, according to two independent NASA reports and NOAA reports. Well, global temperature in 2021 was approximately 1.1 Celsius degrees higher compared to the pre-industrial era. In 2021, we measured new record greenhouse gases emissions concentrations that are to be held accountable for global warming. And we saw that we had 413 parts ppms of CO2. And we saw the ominous outcomes of climate change. Droughts and hot days, wildfires, a shocking snowfall in the United States, extreme weather phenomena in China and Central Europe. And we saw that there's an increasing trend for temperature all around the world that is attributed to human activity that's led to a 90% increase of carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gas emissions. Understanding the pace at which the world develops and changes is vital for all humanity. We need to adjust to a warmer, a hotter world, because we saw that the ice in the Arctic are melting, wildfires become more dangerous, the animal migration patterns change. The goal of the Paris Agreement in 2015 to reduce global warming below 2 degrees Celsius and 1.5 degrees Celsius, the voluntary commitments undertaken by all countries in the framework of the Paris Agreement in order to ensure the carbon phase-out have led to the fact that the average worldwide temperature will exceed 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. In 2018, the Intergovernmental Committee on Climate Change has published a special report on this 1.5 degrees Celsius and warned that if the greenhouse gas emissions don't drop, we will go beyond this 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, and then this means that the whole humanity will sail in uncharted waters. Now, another milestone, Glasgow Agreement. We have a red alarm for the humanity. We have 234 scientists signing from all those countries, and we see that there is an expected increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius over the next 20 years, even in the case of the best-case scenario that provides for substantial decrease of the greenhouse gas emissions, and temperature will continue to rise by 2050. Threatening humanity with new disasters, and the humanity is already affected by floods and wildfires, and this means that a large scale of greenhouse gases emissions reduction, we can limit global warming either to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius by 2100 will be not feasible. 100 countries committed to reduce by 30% the methane emissions to retain this 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. The current trajectory is catastrophic. Now, the scenario for Greece and the Mediterranean. With an increase of an average temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius, what will happen in Greece? Well, 41% more forests will burn annually. Extreme heat waves that normally manifest once every 20 years will increase by 173%. Increased rainfall by 10%, plus 2 degrees Celsius in the marginal scenario for the increase of the worldwide temperature that the Paris Agreement for the Climate provides for the following. We will have 62% more forest burning every year. Extreme heat waves will increase by 478%. Radical and critical rainfall will increase by 21%. Now, let's listen to the recorded message of the Vice President of the European Committee for the Promotion of the European Way of Life, Mr. Margaritis Chinas. Dear friends, I would like to welcome you in this event I fully embrace this discussion held by the European People's Party and my friend, head of regions, Mr. Agorastos at Larissa. This is another action, one of the many that we have created in order to ensure that European policy will be closer to the European citizens. We want to listen to their concerns, we want to listen to their ideas in the regions, the cities and the villages of Europe. Dear friends, I see that more competent speakers than myself will address the entire range of European actions on managing climate change, the Green Deal, as well as the transition of Greece to adapt to the demands of the green economy. From my side, I would like to seize this opportunity in order to correlate this substantial change with all the changes that have been brought forward further to the humanitarian tragedy and the war that we currently live at the heart of Europe. New needs that are linked not only to our defense safety, but also to the energy independence, food crisis, and the food safety. A few words about energy. The need to be independent energy-wise gives a new impetus to the green transition. In the new European framework that we have established, the Repower EU framework, we target to replenish all the natural gas needs for the next year, for the next winter. We want to be independent from the Russian natural gas, and we want to expedite and accelerate this green transition. We also target the transition to low emissions fuels with renewable energy sources, further boosting energy performance, increasing the power grid, the power provision, and decongesting infrastructure. Thanks to those new measures, we want to reduce by 2/3 our dependence from Russian gas by next winter. And it is in this framework that we are faced with the increased energy prices, helping all member states to regulate prices in the case of emergencies, and why not reallocate the additional profit where feasible and where applicable. The green light has been given for state aids, for urgent aids in areas and businesses that are affected by those high prices, just like we did with the reinforcement of employment and liquidity in the times of the pandemic. It is clear that in close collaboration with the national authorities, we will make sure to adopt all necessary measures so that citizens, producers, businessmen, and everyone can make it through those hard times. At the same time, we will keep working in order to become more resilient, laying emphasis on the collaboration with partners all around the world. We are now ready to launch joint natural gas purchases all around Europe, a new flagship process, just like we did with the trade, and we know that this will bring about a tangible benefit for consumers and the living economy. Now, a few words about the impact of war on food and supply. The wheat prices have increased by 70% ever since this war was declared, meaning that this is a burden to the European consumers and also generates a more extensive food risk across all countries, especially in countries that have high reliance on cereals. I'm talking about the Middle East and Northern Africa. We talk about substantial losses in wheat, barley, maize, sunflower oil, animal feed, etc. A few days ago, we drafted a new framework as a response to these emerging food crises, as well as the various risks threatening food safety. Our first goal is to ensure that there is food in Ukraine and all the areas affected currently by this food crisis. Secondly, in Europe, supporting our producers, aiming at ensuring food safety in our system, and at the same time, we try to make it more sustainable, more resilient for the future. We have already committed financing tools amounting to 2.5 billion euro by 2024 for all the countries that are faced with food crisis and precarious conditions. 500 million will specifically be dedicated to African countries. Dear friends, green transition is our absolute priority. It is a strategy that is showing the way in order to adjust to the needs of production, and through our trade agreements we try to keep our goals in the European Union regarding food safety very distinct. Europe must become more sustainable, more resilient. And I would also like to clarify that food sufficiency in Europe is not currently threatened. However, we need to ensure access to affordable goods for the most vulnerable ones, for the small and medium-sized enterprises, and that's an absolute priority. And this is why, with the European People's Party leading the way in this effort, we can now talk about an extra urgent measure that will allow those countries to reinforce their production. I'm talking about how we can better facilitate the farmlands and the expansion of the set-aside measure. This is a legislative initiative undertaken by the committee in order to help farmers make this transition in an easier way, always in light of the conditions created by the war and without jeopardizing the supply chain. Lastly, I know that I am now speaking to the breadbasket of Europe, Larissa. Firstly, I would like to say that we are going to capitalize on all the tools offered by the CAP in order to stabilize the agri-food sector. First of all, we have a 500 million euro crisis package addressed to the farmers that have been substantially and immediately affected by the war. Secondly, we increase the threshold so as to provide advance payments and increase the cash flow of producers, and extraordinary state aids given to those producers to buy seeds and manure and fertilizer, just like we did during the pandemic. Those interventions, all those interventions are substantial, they are useful and they're necessary. I am confident that just like we did it during the pandemic, today Europeans rallied together will stand united by the side of Ukraine, who's fighting for its freedom and the living economy and society. Thank you very much. I wish every success to this one-day event. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Vice President of the European Commission responsible for the European way of life and its promotion. And now the final recorded message by Christos Stylianidis, the Minister of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection. Mr. Stylianidis will talk about the management of crisis. Dear friends,
I can address this event not only as a minister in Greece, but also as a former European Commissioner and a colleague from, as a former MEP member of the European Parliament. Σας καλωσορίζω.
Welcome to Greece. It is a great honor, it is a great pleasure to participate in today's important event, which aims at showing, highlighting various aspects of the climate crisis. And it's also about the urgent need to take action. Actually, it should have been yesterday. Anyway, unfortunately, due to prior commitments, I couldn't physically attend your event in the beautiful region of Thessaly, but I would like to warmly thank the organizing committee of this event for this wonderful conference, and especially the head of the region of Thessaly, my friend Kostas Agorastos. First of all, for his kind invitation and for the possibility to address you, even though it is through an online connection. Dear friends, the climate crisis is a harsh reality, everyday reality now. Those that had their doubts have seen that they were wrong. It is a reality that influences everybody in all aspects whatsoever, with huge consequences, especially on the environment, biodiversity, economy, and health and everyday life. Climate crisis leaves a huge mark on the management, on risk management. And risk management is a top responsibility of our ministry. And I will give you some examples about risk management. Examples from everything we have experienced and we are currently experiencing. The heat waves create conditions that favor wildfires of an unprecedented intensity, as we've seen last summer throughout the Mediterranean, especially in Greece, through the so-called mega fires whose heat load reached 600 degrees Celsius. Also, sudden rainfalls and floods that might lead also to the loss of lives, as with the case of Vianos and Diomidis in Greece. But as you know, floods were also evident in the center of Europe. There were many deaths in Germany and Belgium. So there is an urgent need to adjust. There is an urgent need to adapt in order to manage risk in the best possible way, in the most sufficient way, and also being vigilant. And in order to do that, we have to pay attention to the known threefold aspect: prevention, preparedness, and resilience. So these three aspects, these three dimensions, are at the heart of all the actions undertaken by the Ministry of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection. It is a newly established ministry established by our Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, because indeed we do need such a ministry in order to tackle this climate crisis. In this context, we now adopt a holistic approach, and success should be based at the same time on partnerships, synergies, and cooperations that play a crucial role in risk management and in crisis management and prevention and resilience. It is widely known that climate change is a multi-level challenge. It is a challenge that cannot be tackled only by a single body, a single organization. When I was a commissioner, I often said that this cannot be tackled even at a national level. They should be tackled at a European level, and this is why a lot of actions have been undertaken in order to have upgraded institutions at the European level. At the national level, the crucial role in this new holistic mechanism is played by our ministry, and every day we try to forge new partnerships, and of course we are in contact and in cooperation with local governments, regions and municipalities. Of course, the cooperation with the scientific community is not to be ignored, because they will feed us with informed updates throughout our actions. And of course, voluntary organizations have a role to play. They will be our extra tool to support us and involve the civil society in this effort. However, cooperation with civil society should extend to the maximum degree. It should involve many aspects. We should talk and work with anybody that represents citizens. Dear friends, the planning of our ministry is towards this direction, and as already said, we perceive crisis management as a holistic effort. The crucial point is, of course, awareness raising and training of citizens. Citizens should be involved in preparedness and readiness drills in order to respond accordingly at the time of crisis. We all know that if citizens are not informed and trained on what to do in the case of a natural disaster, unfortunately, they will not be able to respond appropriately. So those drills are possibly one of the most important prevention measures. Apart from prevention, there is also preparedness, as I said. Preparedness, readiness. And specific actions are needed in order to ensure that an innovation that has been introduced this year, and it has been approved by Rescue, is the so-called preposition project. This is an initiative by our country, because back in July and in August, in the middle of the summer, we needed support from other countries. So this summer we will already pre-positioned firefighters in case they are needed. This initiative undoubtedly enhances European solidarity and exchange of know-how at a European level. And this pilot project of prepositioning is necessary because no time should be lost when crises emerge. To conclude with, I would like to talk about certain data from an important project that will allow civil protection to be upgraded in Greece. We will upgrade both prevention, preparedness and resilience. This is the P.O.S.P.I.E.F project. It is a project amounting to 1.7 billion euros. Its implementation period is over the next 5 years. The aim is to enhance the civil protection mechanism in our country at all levels. And the main funding comes from the Recovery Fund and the NFF. In this effort under the P.O.S.P.I.E.F project, our objective is very optimistic. Our objective is to create a civil protection academy which will be the center in which citizens will receive training. It will organize trainings for public administration and local government executives who will be the local leaders that will lead voluntary groups and citizens at the time of crisis. by promoting the idea of preparedness through this project, we want to have smart systems of early warning in case of natural disasters. This is a sine qua non condition. It is a measure that touches both upon prevention and preparedness. I don't want to talk about all details related to the EGIS project, but I want to talk about the upgrade of the 112 tool. It is a major tool that helps the state contact the citizens during the crisis and as a form of early warning. So we seek ways to upgrade it using artificial intelligence as well. This is very important because this is the only way to be in constant contact with the client and co-manage the crisis to mitigate their impact and save properties, save infrastructure, and reduce the environmental cost. At the same time with the EGIS project, our major goal is to upgrade our operational skills and abilities to enhance our capabilities to respond to any urgent emergency by creating a national system for crisis management, a very modern one, that will be the focal point for all our actions. And next time you are in Greece, I would like to invite you to our ministry to show you parts of our crisis management center. It will be similar to the centers established in our countries, and it will be very helpful to ERCC in Brussels. Dear friends, before saying goodbye, I would just like to add a few words related to climate crisis. Risk management and climate crisis are closely linked in all their aspects. So, those that try to discern among the two, either for typical, formal, or scientific or other reasons, it is a mistake that will lead to wrong decisions, but also to the limitation of synergies and partnerships. Cooperation is of the essence. It is the most important thing. Cooperation with civil society, cooperation among all state bodies, cooperation with all stakeholders, cooperation with local governments, and cooperation at the European level. It is an illusion to be thinking that those mega fires or other similar weather phenomena can be handled by each EU member state alone. United, we should stand as Greek people, as Europeans, and we will then be stronger in order to mitigate the impact of natural disasters due to climate crisis. That's the only way to mitigate the problems for Greek and European citizens. Therefore, my final point is that if we are united, we will manage to turn Europe into a climate neutral country by 2050. We should stand united also when it comes to natural disasters. At every stage of risk management related to climate crisis. That's the only way to respond to the climate crisis. Effective risk management needs everybody. That's the only way to create a sustainable future for younger generations, for future generations, for the economy, for the environment. Only if we act together. in order to leave our planet in a much better condition compared to the current one, because we have already delayed in tackling climate change. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm more than certain that your hosts in Thessaly will be very helpful as always. Thank you. The moderator is off the microphone, unfortunately.
Και στην εκπροσώπηση όλων των πεδίων και της πολιτικής, εκεί που λαμβάνονται αποφάσεις και εκτελούνται βεβαίως, αλλά και στο επιστημονικό πεδίο, είναι σημαντική και η παρουσία της διαβίωσης, που όπως είπαμε δεν κάνει διαπιστώσεις, αλλά προσφέρει εργαλεία στην διοίκηση. Συγχαρητήρια, ευχαριστώ για την οργάνωση, κύριε Περιφερειάρχα, και πειράζει να αποκαλύψω μια σκέψη σας που μοιραστήκαμε στη διάρκεια της εκδήλωσης. Να πω λοιπόν, επειδή πιστεύετε στη διάρκεια, πιστεύετε στη διάρκεια και στην εκπαίδευση, ότι όταν θα ευνοήσουν οι συνθήκες, έχουμε τα ηχητικά, όταν θα ευνοήσουν λοιπόν οι συνθήκες.
So, we know that an event will be held because we know we have an audience that needs this knowledge, and I'm talking about children. I think that's wonderful, right, Ms. Makandasis? The comments of Ms. Makandasi are off the microphone. Well, thank you so much. I would like to thank all those who stick with us until the end. Thank you so much.